All right, so another way that biology influences our behavior is with our genetics. So we will talk a lot in this class about nature, which is your genetics, versus nurture, how you were raised. Behavior geneticists study the power and limits of genetics and environment on behavior. All right, so just a biology review real quick. Every human cell has 43 chromosomes, which are basically, when we were drawing them out in our class, we made them little X's. And that's just thread-like pieces of DNA, and that contain genes. You get 23 of those from your mom and 23 from your dad. They are made of DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid. Made up of genes, genes are small segments of DNA. All right, so you have your chromosome, which is a bunch of DNA that's kind of threaded together. Within those chromosomes are genes. So you could have chromosome number 1 could have genes for eye color, skin color, stomach lining, all different kinds of genetic information. Genes can either be turned on or turned off. And you are going to do a really cool little kind of web quest about how the environment can turn genes on and off. So when they're activated, they provide the code for creating protein molecules and building blocks of physical development. Remember, DNA makes RNA, RNA makes proteins, proteins make us. We're just big sacks of proteins, if you remember from biology. So we're not always making all the proteins we're capable of making. Sometimes those genes are turned off. And sometimes we can be in an environment where the genes are turned on. So the environment can determine what genes get turned on and what gets turned off. And that's called epigenetics. So you're going to do a little web quest about epigenetics, which I just find endlessly fascinating. All right, let's talk about twins. So we're going to see so many twin studies in psychology, because it really is the best way to study genetics, because identical twins develop from a single fertilized egg that splits in half. So they have the exact same genetic information. Fraternal twins develop from 2 separate fertilized eggs but share a fetal environment. Fraternal twins is how you can have boy-girl twins. Identical twins, of course, cannot be boy-girl twins because they share the identical genetic information. Now, when we talk about heritability, we're going to discuss the extent to which variations among individuals can be attributed to genes. So in identical twins, heritability is 0 because there's no difference in the genes for each identical twin. All right, so the heritability is 0. Human differences result from genetic and environmental influences. So, for instance, overweight. There are genes that give you the propendency for being overweight. But if you're in, say, a family who always eats really healthy, who's super active, you're probably not going to be overweight even if you carry those genes. I always like to say that heredity deals the cards, but the environment plays the hand. All right? Heredity deals the cards, but the environment plays the hand. Now, the last thing we need to talk about when we're talking about biological basis for behavior is the endocrine system. So the endocrine system is a system of glands that secrete hormones directly into the bloodstream. And these hormones will have a specific action in each specific gland. So the hormones are usually, most hormones are released by the pituitary gland, but there are others, and they are going to activate a specific gland to do a specific purpose. So some of the endocrine glands are your pituitary gland. This controls it controls a lot of other glands. So it sends out information to other glands to make hormones, which can be confusing. And it is responsible for human growth hormone. So it controls growth. The pineal gland contains melatonin, and melatonin is our sleepy time hormone. Melatonin, as the day goes on, melatonin should increase in your system while serotonin goes down because they work opposite each other. So at night should be the highest amount of melatonin you have, and then in the morning time should be the highest amount of serotonin you have, because during the night melatonin goes down, serotonin goes up. The thyroid gland regulates metabolism. The pancreas controls blood sugar. The ovaries and testes secrete estrogen and testosterone. And the adrenal glands deal with stress and salt, so SNS. So here are some of these. Now, the hypothalamus isn't really a gland. The hypothalamus, remember, is a part of the brain structure that we talked about with the brain. It's part of the nervous system. It actually controls the pituitary gland. We discussed that earlier. The pituitary gland is going to secrete many different hormones that affect a whole bunch of other glands. The thyroid gland affects metabolism. Adrenal gland is your fight or flight norepinephrine response. Pancreas, blood sugar, ovary, female hormones, and testes, male hormones. Now, why are we talking about behavior? Why do we need to discuss endocrine glands when we're talking about behavior? Well, for instance, if you have an issue with your adrenal gland, you might have an overactive fight or flight response or an underactive fight or flight response. Okay, so that's going to result in an odd behavior. Female hormones, estrogen and progesterone, both can result in differing behaviors depending on if there's a lot of it or not enough of it. Too much testosterone can make you angry and aggressive. Too little can make you lethargic. So all of these endocrine glands, when unregulated, can create certain behaviors. So as we go on talking about, different disorders and different behaviors, we might see that some of our glands our hormones are behind those behaviors.